Molly is a friend. Molly is a coworker. Molly is somebody that I have leaned on many occasions in the past, as she has done when it comes to me. We've been partners on the show for the last 10 years. And a lot of times some of these things happen and it's just uncomfortable to see. The details, quite frankly, are none of y'all business. But
that was Stephen A. Smith, completely blindsided by his co-host's sudden exit. Molly Qerim had been the face of First Take for more than a decade, but something snapped behind the scenes, something big enough to shake the entire foundation of ESPN. Now, she's signed a massive new deal outside the network, and insiders say ESPN's top brass are absolutely furious about it. So what really went down? Let's break this mess wide open.
To be blunt, it came as a shock. I was not aware that this is something that she was contemplating doing. But in the end, she made her decision. And we have to move on as a show. I don't like it. I'm not happy about it. Because I appreciate her and what she has meant to me, what she has meant to the show, what she has meant to the network, what she's meant to the business.
It all began as just another Monday morning at ESPN's Bristol headquarters, or so everyone thought. But what unfolded that day turned into one of the most shocking, dramatic departures in modern sports media history. On September 15th, 2025, Molly Qerim walked straight out of the First Take studio and didn't come back. Not even her longtime co-host Stephen A. Smith saw it coming, and that's saying something. Within 48 hours, the situation spiraled into chaos, exposing deep cracks inside ESPN and revealing the harsh truth about how the network really treats its biggest stars.
Mina Kimes is making nearly $2 million for cluttering up a football show. I just, when Stephen A. sits atop and you're paying him $20 million, it just raises everyone else's expectations and frustrations. So those are my two initial thoughts on why it's over so abruptly and so quickly for Molly Qerim.
Picture this. It's Monday morning, the studio lights are blazing, and Molly's right where she always is, commanding the table with that effortless poise and razor-sharp control that made her one of ESPN's most trusted voices. She's keeping Stephen A. and the rotating panel of analysts in check, balancing egos, opinions, and energy like a pro. On camera, everything looks perfect, polished, professional, seamless. But behind that composed smile, something darker was brewing.
But just imagine all this time, and you're in that position. And then you get to the position where you're in another contract negotiation. You're not hearing what you want to hear. You're not hearing it not only in the money, but in also they're talking funny in terms of giving you greater role. And you're like, it's time to move on. Imagine you're in that moment. What will make you, a report comes out after you do a Monday show, not show up for work on Tuesday?
Sources say tension had been building for weeks. Whispers about contracts, pay disputes, and creative control had turned the set into a pressure cooker. Molly packed her things, took one long look around the First Take studio, and walked out for the very last time. No grand goodbye, no warning, no hint of what was about to erupt. As she drove home, she was reportedly replaying months of exhausting contract talks, endless back and forths, lowball offers that felt like insults, and meetings with ESPN execs who seemed to praise her publicly while undervaluing her privately. Imagine that. The very woman who helped First Take become a ratings powerhouse now feeling like an afterthought at her own network. But what Molly didn't know was that her world was about to flip overnight, literally. Because while she slept, Sports Business Journal's Austin Karp dropped a late-night bombshell that shook the entire industry. The headline hit like a thunderclap. Sources: Molly Qerim leaving ESPN's First Take. Within minutes, it spread like wildfire, from newsroom whispers to front-page headlines across every major sports outlet. What had been a confidential, behind-closed-doors negotiation suddenly turned into the biggest public story in sports media.
Because we talked about the whole Molly Qerim situation in the morning. We're thinking, okay, it's going to play out, and there's going to be a grand farewell, celebration show, goodbye. And she just Dear John'd him. She said, out. I was like, wow. So obviously, this is pretty obvious. At least from Molly's point of view, I don't think it was the most amicable split.
The article detailed everything. How Molly had turned down ESPN's renewal offer, citing misaligned visions for her future, and a deep desire to start a new chapter. After a decade alongside Stephen A. Smith, it sounded polite, professional, until you read between the lines. Insiders say the real story was far messier, that Molly was done with being talked over, underpaid, and boxed in by a system that didn't value her voice. And here's where it gets wild. The report suggested Molly would finish out the year, giving ESPN time to prepare a graceful exit. But that's not what happened. When she woke up Tuesday morning and saw her private negotiations plastered across every sports site in America, something inside her snapped. She made a decision on the spot. No calls, no warnings, no explanations. Rather than showing up to work that day, Molly went silent, leaving ESPN in chaos and Stephen A. Smith completely blindsided on live television. Instead of showing up for work as scheduled, Molly took matters into her own hands. And at exactly 9 a.m. Eastern Time, she dropped a bombshell that would send ESPN into full-blown crisis mode. On her Instagram story, she posted a message that no one, not her fans, not her colleagues, not even Stephen A. Smith, saw coming. It is with a heavy heart that I share I'll be leaving ESPN and First Take effective immediately. Grateful doesn't begin to cover my 10 incredible years here. This show changed my life. To the fans, thank you for the love. To my team, your family. Excited for what's next. Grateful, effective immediately. No end of the year transition. No farewell tour. No goodbye episode. Immediately. With one post, one sentence, Molly Qerim had just ended a decade-long run and walked away from a multi-million-dollar contract, shocking everyone inside ESPN and beyond.
I'm not surprised. I'm only surprised at the timing. I'm surprised that she didn't just tap out over the weekend and they make no mention of it and they land that plane a lot softer than they did. This was an abrupt landing. This is an emergency exit. This is an emergency landing. This is one of those for a reason. I give you what a therapist told me. Therapist told me it's not just how things end, it's why are they ending that way?
Within minutes, the internet went insane. Her story racked up over 500,000 views in the first hour, and Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok lit up with theories, reactions, and wild speculation. The hashtag MOLLYQERIM shot straight to the top of national trends, as fans and insiders alike scrambled to figure out what had just gone down. How does someone go from confidently hosting a live show on Monday to being completely gone by Tuesday morning? But if that wasn't enough to rattle the industry, what happened a few hours later made it even worse. When First Take went live that day, viewers immediately noticed something was off. No Molly, no energy, just Stephen A. Smith sitting alone at that massive desk. His expression said it all. This wasn't part of the plan. And as the cameras rolled, Stephen A. took a deep breath and delivered the kind of news that left millions of fans absolutely stunned. The word abruptly hit like a freight train, because that's exactly what it was. This wasn't some neatly planned transition or a mutual handshake behind closed doors. This was Molly Qerim straight up walking away, effectively rage-quitting one of the most coveted hosting jobs in all of sports media. No warning, no build-up, just a clean break that stunned everyone at ESPN. When First Take aired that morning, Stephen A. Smith's tone said it all. His words were measured, calm, composed, diplomatic, but his face told a different story. You could see the frustration in his eyes, the disbelief, the confusion. This was a man who had spent a decade debating, laughing, and building chemistry beside Molly. And even he looked completely caught off guard by the suddenness of it all.
The obvious take is that whatever happened is it wasn't amicable. This is not them parting on good terms. I think you look at the way it was reported by Austin Karp at Sports Business Journal on Monday night, and it comes out that, you know, she's going to be done at the end of the year, which is pretty early, I would say, in these type of negotiations to make that sort of judgment when you're still 3 months out. But sometimes that happens. Sometimes both sides realize they're at the end, and they've reached kind of a stalemate, and they both decide to go their separate ways.
Behind the scenes, ESPN's executives were in full-blown panic mode. Insiders say they were blindsided not only by Molly's Instagram announcement, but also by how fast the story had spread. They had planned to roll out the narrative closer to December. A clean farewell, a PR-managed goodbye. But Molly's move forced their hand, leaving them scrambling to contain the damage. And the timing couldn't have been worse. Right in the heart of football season, when First Take dominates morning sports talk, when the debates are hottest, and when every network needs its A-team firing on all cylinders. ESPN suddenly found itself with a massive hole at the desk and no clear plan to fill it. Ironically, the chaos paid off, Nick, at least temporarily. The first episode without Molly drew a 15% spike in ratings year over year, pulling in nearly 750,000 viewers. But let's be real, people weren't tuning in for Stephen A's takes on the NFL. They were tuning in to watch the meltdown. Social media went absolutely nuclear. Within hours, hashtag Molly Qerim had racked up over 2.5 million impressions, with 60% of posts expressing pure shock and disbelief. As the news broke and fans processed the word abruptly, the internet erupted with one collective question: what really happened? People demanded answers, but ESPN stayed silent, fueling even more speculation. Yet what made this entire saga so fascinating was that it wasn't just about one woman leaving a TV show. This was the explosive result of tension that had been brewing quietly behind the scenes for months, maybe even years.
I thought that was a kind of an interesting segue that he had in terms of the Molly Qerim situation. And now that you say it, I'm thinking, are those two things connected? That maybe Stephen A says, hey, I have great value. She's our point guard. I'm comfortable with her. Maybe the higher up said, hey, look, Stephen A, you got the money. The budget is the budget. And maybe, this is just a theory, just my opinion, maybe he wanted Molly Qerim to get extra money, but again, it's not his money. It's not his budget.
It all traced back to January 2025, when early talks began about renewing Molly Qerim's contract. Her deal was set to expire at the end of the year, and by all accounts, it should have been a smooth process, a formality. But instead, those talks spiraled into one of the ugliest behind-the-scenes standoffs ESPN had ever faced. Because let's be clear, Molly wasn't just any host. She was the reason First Take transformed from a niche morning debate show into ESPN's crown jewel. Under her leadership, viewership exploded, averaging more than 600,000 daily viewers and climbing an astonishing 45% from 2015 to 2024. The show's yearly ad revenue soared past $100 million, and much of that success was credited to her balance, composure, and ability to keep Stephen A. Smith's intensity in check while holding the show together like clockwork. She wasn't just moderating, she was steering the ship. Yet despite the ratings, the respect, and even Emmy nominations, ESPN's new offer felt like a slap in the face. Sources say Molly had been earning around $500,000 per year, while her co-host Stephen A. Smith was pocketing a jaw-dropping $20 million. That's not a small gap. That's a 40-to-1 ratio. Let that sink in for a second. And when ESPN finally put their best offer on the table, a 4-year deal worth between $700,000 and $850,000 per year, with a measly 5% annual bump and about $200,000 in incentives, it felt like an insult. Sure, to an outsider that might sound like great money, but for the face of ESPN's flagship show, for the woman who had boosted female viewership by 30% and helped redefine morning sports television, it was more than just underpayment. It was a clear message about how the network valued her contributions. ESPN's proposal came with strings attached, and not the good kind.
It's like Stephen A put on his apology voice, whenever he gets into a scandal that he has to monologue an apology for. That was the same type of voice he was using at the top of today's show.
According to insiders, the network wanted Molly to become more versatile, meaning she'd have to dedicate 20% of her time to side projects outside First Take. Things like ESPN plus documentaries, women's sports panels, and promotional appearances. On paper, it sounded like opportunity. In reality, it looked like a setup to dilute her brand and stretch her thin, all while keeping her salary suspiciously low. Sources close to the situation called the offer downright disrespectful, not just because of the dollar figure, but because of what it implied, that Molly was somehow replaceable, that after a decade of keeping First Take steady, she was just another cog in ESPN's machine. It wasn't about growth, it was about control, spreading her out so much that she couldn't focus on what she had built from the ground up. But here's where the hypocrisy hit hard. While ESPN was nickel and diming Molly, they were simultaneously handing out huge paydays to other on-air talent. And get this, the same day news broke about Molly's potential exit, ESPN proudly announced a massive multi-year extension for rising NBA reporter Malika Andrews. That timing wasn't a coincidence, it was a message. Fans immediately began speculating that the network had been quietly preparing for Molly's replacement long before she ever walked out. So when the Sports Business Journal leak exposed Molly's entire contract drama to the public, that was it, the breaking point. After months of tense back and forths, frustrating meetings, and offers that undervalued everything she'd brought to ESPN. The leak made things public, embarrassing, and irreversible. That was ESPN President of Content, Burke Magnus, doing his best to spin the chaos. And you could practically hear the damage control in his voice. In a follow-up interview with The Athletic, Magnus admitted, "The Sports Business Journal report on Monday forced our hand. Negotiations weren't totally aligned on roles beyond First Take, but we wanted Molly to stay in some capacity. She chose a clean break, and with the story out, it made sense to act now rather than drag it out. A clean break? Please. That's corporate code for we messed up badly." ESPN had completely misread the situation, and now they were scrambling to rewrite the narrative. The truth? They never imagined Molly would actually walk away. Not this fast, not this boldly. They assumed they could lowball her, drag negotiations out, and eventually pressure her into signing a deal on their terms. But they underestimated her, and that mistake would haunt them. Because Molly Qerim didn't just quit, she flipped the entire power dynamic at ESPN in one calculated move. What looked like a meltdown from the outside was actually a masterclass in leverage. And if you thought this story was just about salary disputes or contract clauses, you're missing the real picture. This was about control, influence, and the toxic politics brewing behind ESPN's polished image. Then came the twist that blew the lid off everything. Enter Marcellus Wiley, former ESPN analyst turned podcast powerhouse. Just 5 days after Molly's stunning exit, Wiley dropped a theory so bold it sent shockwaves through the entire sports media world. In a YouTube episode that would rack up over 1.3 million views, Wiley suggested that Molly hadn't just walked away in frustration, she had executed one of the most brilliant power plays in modern TV history. According to Wiley, Molly knew exactly what she was doing at TI, walking out at the peak of football season, right after a leak, and right before ESPN's biggest revenue quarter. It wasn't chaos, it was strategy. But Wiley didn't stop there. His theory went even deeper, claiming that Molly had grown tired of being overshadowed by Stephen A. Smith's enormous influence at the network. Behind the scenes, she reportedly felt boxed out, creatively, financially, and professionally. So, instead of fighting a losing battle internally, she made a move ESPN couldn't control, one that would force the world to pay attention. In Wiley's words, this wasn't just a resignation, it was a statement. And the impact of that statement would send ripples through every corner of ESPN's empire. Here's where the story takes a sharp turn, because this is where the real power dynamics behind ESPN's walls come into focus. According to Marcellus Wiley's theory, Molly Qerim's sudden departure didn't just expose a contract dispute, it exposed the entire power structure that had quietly formed around one man, Stephen A. Smith. This wasn't your average co-host situation. Over the years, Stephen A. had evolved from being just a star anchor into something far bigger, a power broker. Inside ESPN, his voice carried more weight than almost anyone else's. His approval could make or break careers. Wiley described it as a one-man empire. And when you look at the numbers, it's hard to argue. Stephen A.'s current ESPN deal, a staggering $105 million over 5 years, plus another $12 million from his Sirius XM show, bringing his total earnings to roughly $40 million a year. But that money doesn't just buy fame, it buys control. Smith isn't just the face of First Take, he's also an executive producer, which gives him the power to influence who gets hired, who gets fired, and even who gets raises. Wiley pointed to something fans had long whispered about, that Stephen A. had used his influence to help certain colleagues land bigger contracts. People like Kendrick Perkins, Dan Orlovsky, and Ryan Clark had all reportedly benefited from his pull within the network. That sounds generous, right? But here's the dark side. If Stephen A. doesn't go to bat for you, you're on your own. And according to Wiley, that's exactly what happened to Molly. She wasn't just negotiating with ESPN's top brass, she was, in effect, negotiating with Stephen A. himself. Her future at ESPN may have depended on whether he believed she was worth fighting for. Imagine that. You've spent 10 years helping build a billion-dollar brand, but your next move hinges on whether your co-host decides you deserve a better deal. The implications are staggering, and the evidence lines up. Look at the trail of former First Take personalities. Max Kellerman, for instance, who was pushed out in the 2023 after creative differences with Stephen A. and never shared the same chemistry or protection that others had. Then there's Shannon Sharpe, who exited for Fox Sports 1 after clashing with the same internal politics. The pattern is clear. Time and time again, those who didn't align with Stephen A.'s orbit found themselves on the outside looking in. Wiley's theory argued that ESPN had effectively allowed one person to accumulate too much control, so much that even a decade-long co-host like Molly was forced to navigate her career through his influence. But perhaps the most explosive part of Wiley's claim wasn't just about Stephen A's power. It was about the timing of Molly's exit and what it might have quietly revealed about her relationship with the most powerful man in sports television. Here's where things get really telling, and it's something most viewers might have missed at first. When someone leaves a show after 10 years, especially after what's been portrayed as a positive working relationship, there's usually mutual respect shown. You expect a public thank you, maybe a heartfelt mention, something that acknowledges that shared history. But when Molly Qerim posted her Instagram farewell, sharp-eyed fans noticed something that changed the tone completely. She thanked the fans. She called her production team family, but one name was missing: Stephen A. Smith. No tag, no shout-out, not even a mention. For two people who'd spent nearly a decade debating, laughing, and building one of the most watched shows in sports television, that silence spoke volumes. It was deafening, and it wasn't one-sided either. When Stephen A. addressed Molly's exit on First Take, his tone was off. He said all the right things on paper. He praised her professionalism, her impact, her years of dedication, but the delivery felt strained. Awkward pauses, careful phrasing, eyes that seemed to be holding something back. It didn't sound like a man saying goodbye to a close friend. It sounded like someone trying to protect an image while quietly fuming inside. Then came the moment that really exposed the tension. When a fan online asked Stephen A. about the situation, his response was short and sharp. "None of y'all business." That's not the tone of someone heartbroken over a colleague's departure. That's the tone of someone defensive, someone who knows there's more to the story and doesn't want to go there publicly. Behind the scenes, multiple sources later revealed that the relationship between Molly and Stephen A. had been deteriorating for quite some time. Production data reportedly showed a huge imbalance. Stephen A. dominating 60 to 65% of the total speaking time per episode, while Molly was left with just 15 to 20%. Over time, her role as moderator had shifted from balanced host to more of a traffic controller, managing Stephen A.'s endless monologues instead of sharing equal spotlight. Fans even pointed back to a 2024 episode that had aged terribly. A moment where Stephen A., mid-debate, jokingly cut Molly off on live TV, dismissing her attempt to keep the show moving. That infamous moment, "Molly, I'm talking here," exploded across social media, racking up over 500,000 views in just a few hours and sparking the viral #sign Let Molly Speak. What was meant to sound like lighthearted studio banter suddenly looked very different when replayed online. Fans didn't see it as a joke. They saw a woman being talked over, dismissed, and minimized on her own show. And that clip became the perfect symbol of everything that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. But the real issue went far beyond a few tense exchanges on air. According to insiders, Stephen A. Smith's influence behind the scenes had grown massive, far beyond that of any co-host. He reportedly had final say over segment topics, guest lineups, and even the direction of the show's tone. Molly's input, once valued, was allegedly being pushed aside. She didn't want to just moderate the show, she wanted to help shape its voice. But as Stephen A.'s reach expanded, her creative control shrank. And then came the personal remarks, the kind that blurred the line between friendly teasing and crossing boundaries. On several occasions, Stephen A. made comments about Molly's eating habits, personal life, and even subtle nods to her 2021 divorce from former NBA player Jalen Rose. While some viewers brushed these moments off as harmless banter, others called them uncomfortable and unprofessional. Behind the scenes, sources close to Molly revealed that she had privately expressed frustration about these moments, saying they made her feel undermined, like her credibility as a respected host was being chipped away bit by bit. It wasn't just about airtime anymore, it was about respect. And according to Marcellus Wiley's theory, all of it, the imbalance, the dismissive tone, the public awkwardness, had been leading to one decisive breaking point. The leaked contract story wasn't the problem. It was simply the final spark that lit the fuse. By leaving immediately and leaving Stephen A. to face the cameras alone, Molly was doing more than quitting. She was sending a message loud and clear. First Take didn't make her. She made First Take. Her exit wasn't just a walkout, it was a statement of power. And in one move, she'd proven what no one at ESPN wanted to admit. The show needed Molly Qerim far more than Molly Qerim ever needed the show. The reaction to Marcellus Wiley's theory was nothing short of explosive. Within hours, the #MOL Lysreveng began trending across social media, amassing over 5,000 posts and igniting a full-blown online firestorm. Polls showed that nearly 65% of fans agreed Molly had been underappreciated and undervalued during her time at ESPN. Comments poured in from longtime viewers who suddenly realized they'd been seeing the same red flags all along. The way Stephen A. dominated conversations, how Molly's interjections were often brushed aside, and how her voice seemed to shrink more and more over the years. People weren't just reacting to Wiley's words, they were validating them with their own observations. The conversation quickly expanded beyond Molly and Stephen A. because, as Wiley pointed out, this was bigger than one relationship. It exposed a pattern within ESPN's culture itself, a system where too much power had been concentrated in the hands of a single individual. Wiley wasn't just talking about influence, he was talking about control. He claimed that Stephen A. Smith's level of access within the company was unlike anything other on-air personalities had. He reportedly knew about personnel changes before they were announced, was consulted on internal decisions, and even had the ability to advocate for or block other host career opportunities. That's not normal influence. That's executive power wrapped in celebrity status. And as Wiley explained, that kind of system is toxic by design. When one person holds that much sway, it changes the entire work environment. Instead of being rewarded purely for talent and performance, people start having to play politics, staying on the right side of whoever's holding the power. Advancement becomes less about merit and more about favor. In that kind of setup, even someone as seasoned and respected as Molly Qerim could find herself boxed in. She was exceptionally qualified, beloved by audiences, and crucial to the success of First Take, yet unable to grow because she didn't have the one thing that mattered most: the network's most powerful voice advocating for her. There's another layer to this story that can't be ignored: the gender dynamic. A 2025 Sports Media Watch report revealed that female hosts in debate-style shows face 30% higher public scrutiny and earn, on average, 35% less than their male counterparts. Molly Qerim's case couldn't have illustrated that imbalance more clearly. She wasn't just part of First Take, she was its backbone. Yet she was being paid a fraction of what her male co-host earned for doing the same show, on the same stage, under the same pressure. ESPN's response to the growing backlash only made things worse. The network went straight into damage control mode. Burke Magnus, ESPN's president of content, scrambled to grant interviews with multiple outlets, insisting that there's no controversy here, and calling Molly's exit a mutual evolution in business. But the more he tried to downplay it, the more obvious it became that Wiley's theory had struck a nerve, because the truth was impossible to ignore anymore. Molly's departure had exposed a culture ESPN had been quietly nurturing for years, a star system that rewarded influence over teamwork and control over collaboration, a system where one person's power could overshadow an entire production team. And whether Molly intended it or not, her bold exit forced the network to face an uncomfortable question: had their own success turned toxic? But just when it seemed like the drama had reached its peak, the story took an even wilder turn, one that would flip the entire narrative upside down. While ESPN's executives scrambled to contain the PR damage, and Stephen A. Smith tried to steady the show's reputation, something massive was unfolding behind the scenes: a full-scale bidding war for Molly Qerim's next move. That's right, within days of her exit, the rest of the sports media world smelled opportunity. Molly wasn't just a free agent, she was the most talked about name in television. Her walkout had sent shockwaves across the industry, and rival networks saw dollar signs and redemption. The first bombshell dropped just 4 days after her exit, and it came from an unexpected source. Then came the bombshell that changed everything. According to the US Sun, Fox Sports had swooped in with a jaw-dropping offer that made ESPN's proposal look downright embarrassing. We're talking about a 3-year deal worth $2 million per year in base salary, with performance bonuses that could push her total compensation to between $2.5 and $3 million annually. Let that sink in. ESPN's final best offer capped at around $850,000 a year. Fox Sports came in more than double that amount as their starting point. For someone who had reportedly been earning around $500,000 at ESPN, this wasn't just a raise, it was a career revolution, a 400 to 500% increase that didn't just change her paycheck, and it changed her entire future. But here's what made the Fox deal truly powerful. It wasn't just about the money, it was about respect, authority, and control. The contract positioned Molly as a multi-sport anchor, not just a host. She'd have a hand in NFL studio coverage, college football previews, NCAA basketball programming, and for the first time in her career, had her own branded podcast under the Fox umbrella. And the kicker? The deal gave her something ESPN had stubbornly refused to provide: lead host status with full creative control and veto power over segments, guests, and production direction. At ESPN, she'd been boxed into a supporting role, the polished moderator tasked with managing egos, transitions, and keeping Stephen A. Smith's monologues on schedule. She was the glue that held the chaos together, yet she only got 15 to 20% of the airtime on her own show. Fox Sports, on the other hand, wanted to flip that script completely. They weren't hiring Molly to play referee, they were hiring her to lead. She'd have her name on segments, her voice driving the conversations, and her vision shaping the brand. This was more than a new contract. It was vindication. Fox wasn't just offering Molly Qerim a raise, they were offering her a throne. The deal made it clear she wouldn't be sharing the spotlight anymore. She'd own it. Fox wanted Molly to be the undisputed star of her own lineup of shows, with full creative control and the authority to shape every discussion that unfolded on screen. This wasn't about being a moderator anymore. This was about being the voice driving the narrative. Even more impressive were the performance bonuses built into her contract, up to $500,000 tied directly to viewership targets. But these weren't random metrics. They were specific, strategic, and bold. The bonuses kicked in if Molly's programs outperformed ESPN's First Take in the coveted 18 to 49 demographic and among female viewers. Translation? Fox wasn't just hiring her, they were weaponizing her success against ESPN's morning empire. But Fox wasn't the only giant circling. Within days of her exit, reports surfaced that Amazon Prime Video had entered the picture too, exploring a football-focused debate show centered around the NFL, valued at roughly $1.8 million per year. Amazon was building its sports programming slate fast, and Molly's sudden availability looked like the perfect opportunity to strengthen their live sports push. And the interest didn't stop there. NBC Sports was also reportedly in active talks considering Molly for Football Night in America or even a revamped college football studio show, with offers estimated between $1.5 and $2 million for a 2-year term. Suddenly, the same host ESPN had undervalued for years had the biggest players in sports media fighting to land her. What this bidding war revealed was nothing short of shocking: Molly's true market value. For years, ESPN had treated her as if she were replaceable, a polished traffic cop meant to keep the real stars on track. But these rapid, high-stakes offers told a completely different story. These weren't sympathy calls or industry courtesies these were serious, big-money power moves. The networks weren't just interested in hiring a talented host, they wanted a proven professional who had shown she could hold her own beside the loudest voices in sports, command audience loyalty, and maintain composure in chaos. At this point, the industry wasn't just seeing Molly Qerim as a talented host, they were recognizing her as a legitimate star. The timing of the offers pouring in told the whole story. Within hours of her Instagram announcement, phones were lighting up. Talent agents, executives, and rival networks were scrambling to reach her team, realizing instantly that ESPN had just made one of the biggest blunders in modern sports media history. But what really exposed ESPN's miscalculation was how they responded once the news of Molly's lucrative options started circulating. Instead of owning up to their mistake, or at least trying to make a counteroffer, ESPN dug in their heels. They stuck to their scripted PR line, claiming her exit was simply part of a mutual evolution. Burke Magnus repeated that same talking point to The Athletic, saying, "Our discussions with Molly evolved and we respect her decision to seek new horizons. The tryouts will ensure First Take stays dynamic." Translation? Corporate spin. In reality, that's ESPN saying, "We messed up, but we're going to pretend this was always the plan." They underestimated her value, lost her to competitors who actually recognized it, and now we're trying to act like nothing had gone wrong. Meanwhile, as ESPN quietly held tryouts to find a new moderator, a revolving door of hopefuls testing chemistry with Stephen A., the contrast couldn't have been more humiliating. While ESPN was treating Molly as replaceable, Fox Sports, NBC, and Amazon were offering her multi-million-dollar contracts, creative control, and lead host power over entire franchises. It was a brutal look for the so-called worldwide leader in sports, and that embarrassment only deepened when the numbers started rolling in. Because in the weeks that followed her departure, First Take's viewership told a painful truth. Molly hadn't been just a moderator. She was a stabilizing force, the one who balanced Stephen A's chaos with composure, timing, and charisma. Without her, the energy felt off, the chemistry fractured, and fans noticed immediately. The networks fighting to sign her understood something ESPN had failed to grasp until it was too late. Molly Qerim wasn't replaceable. She was the difference between First Take running smoothly and First Take falling apart on live television. At first, First Take's ratings managed to hold steady, but only because fans were tuning in out of pure curiosity about the drama. Yet, as the weeks passed, cracks started to show. Without Molly Qerim's steady presence guiding the chaos, the show began to lose its rhythm. Production data revealed something striking. During episodes with interim hosts like Ryan Clark, Stephen A. Smith interrupted guests nearly 10% less than usual. That wasn't coincidence. It was proof of just how much he had relied on Molly to balance his explosive style, keep the tempo sharp, and maintain order when debates went off the rails. Social media confirmed what the data hinted at. Posts like, "The show just feels off without Molly's flow" from users, such as at First Take Fan, racked up thousands of likes. Polls showed that 70% of viewers supported Molly's decision to leave, with most questioning whether First Take could maintain its chemistry or credibility without her leadership behind the desk. But underneath the ratings and reactions lay something far deeper, an uncomfortable truth about the sports media industry itself, the way female talent is valued, compensated, and respected. The Sports Media Watch report from 2025 had already revealed that women in debate-style roles earn 35% less on average than men. But in Molly's case, that wasn't just a number, it was her lived reality. Look at the math. Stephen A. Smith pulls in roughly $20 million per year from ESPN alone. If Molly had been paid even 10% of that amount, a perfectly reasonable figure given her equal contribution to a show generating over $100 million annually in advertising revenue, her salary should have been around $2 million per year. Instead, ESPN's final offer topped out at just $850,000, and they expected her to feel grateful for it. That pay gap wasn't about talent. It was about perception. ESPN had fallen into the same trap the industry has repeated for decades, undervaluing the moderator while over-rewarding the star. But anyone who's ever watched First Take knows the truth. Without a skilled moderator like Molly keeping the chaos controlled and the tension balanced, the entire format collapses. For years, ESPN operated under a dangerous assumption that moderators were replaceable, background figures meant to guide the real personalities. But the bidding war for Molly Qerim proved just how catastrophically wrong that mindset was. She wasn't the background, she was the backbone. And now every major network finally knew it. What makes this story even more fascinating are the strategic implications behind Fox Sports' move. By offering Molly a deal that would make her the face of their sports programming, Fox wasn't just adding star power, they were launching a direct attack on ESPN's morning dominance. Their message was clear: if ESPN won't value its talent, Fox will, and they'll use that talent to compete head-on. Fox's strategy was simple but ruthless. They were betting that the millions of viewers who had come to appreciate Molly's intelligence, composure, and energy on First Take would follow her wherever she went. And if even a fraction of that audience made the jump, it could deliver a serious blow to ESPN's market share. And let's be honest, this playbook has worked before. When Shannon Sharpe left ESPN's ecosystem for Fox Sports One's Undisputed, he didn't just bring experience, he brought credibility and audience loyalty. When Skip Bayless made his high-profile move from ESPN to Fox, he proved that strong personalities could successfully transition between rival networks without losing their following. But Molly's situation? It's different and even more powerful. She's not switching networks to play a supporting role. She's being positioned as the star. For the first time in her career, she's in full control of her narrative, her platform, and her worth. According to reports, Molly is taking her time with the decision, carefully weighing each offer and watching the media landscape shift in real time. Insiders say she plans to wait until late October before finalizing any deal, a move designed to maximize leverage and drive up competitive offers. It's a smart, strategic play, one that shows she's learned exactly how this industry works and refuses to ever let herself be undervalued again. The power dynamic has shifted, and for once the ball is entirely in her court. ESPN may have underestimated her, but now every network in the business is fighting to prove they won't make the same mistake. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. And drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Molly should take the Fox deal or hold out for something even bigger? Let's talk about it, and I'll see you in the next one.